Welcome to Tulsa Community College Diversity Dialogue. I'm Rebecca Marks. Louder Than a Bomb is coming to Tulsa. And here to join me to talk about it is Kevin Coval. He is the founder of Louder Than a Bomb, the largest youth poetry festival in the world. He has written several books on hip-hop poetry. He writes for the Huffington Post and is heard regularly on the Chicago Public Radio. He teaches at the School of Art Institute in Chicago. Also, my next guest, she needs no introduction. Glenda Silvey is a former anchor of KOTV's midday newscast, and presently she serves as the Public Affairs Director for OU Tulsa. Glenda and Kevin, thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rebecca.
Now, you know, OU is involved with this, but first I'd like to know, what is a poetry slam?
Poetry Slam is an Olympic-style competition that basically gives a score to a poem, which sounds ridiculous, and it is, but it was intended to bring more people to a poetry audience. And it actually started in Chicago by a construction worker / poet named Mark Smith. He stood up on a bar table at the Get Me High Lounge on the north side of Chicago, gave his other construction worker friends a scorecard and said, you know, give me a score on my poem. And since that time, this is in the mid '80s. Since that time, Poetry Slam has gone around the world and has done that, has made poetry, I think, bigger in cities across the country and across the planet.
Well, how does it differ from spoken word?
Well, Poetry Slam is I think a form in spoken word, and I would make the argument that hip hop poetry is probably the reason why there is a prevalence of orality, like the return of the spoken word to public space is in part due to the impact that hip-hop music and culture has had, I think, on now probably 4 generations of listeners. I started writing because I was listening to the working class narratives that were coming out of the Bronx in the late 70s and early 80s, and I think that has helped spread the word, literally. And you know, I didn't know anyone who made beats, so I just stood up at some point and kicked what I thought was a rhyme, and somebody was like, yo, that was a good poem. I'm like, I wasn't trying to write a poem. What are you talking about? But then, you know, hip hop sent me to the library, and I think it's gotten now, you know, multiple generations of listeners writing their own working class narratives. Wow.
Now, Glenda, how did OU get involved with poetry? Are you into poetry writing?
Well, I love poetry. I'm an English major. Of course, I love poetry. Wow. But actually, Ken Martin, who is a graduate student in the MHR program, I believe you are an MHR graduate of OU, of whom we're very proud, he found out about Louder Than a Bomb. He saw a trailer on the documentary, read more about it, became very interested in it, and suggested it as his master's project. And that's how it came about. Then several other OU Tulsa organizations came on board, other community partners, including the Circle Cinema. We began working with Tulsa Public Schools students and with Kevin and Nate, and it's just been a pleasure. It really fits in with OU Tulsa's community engagement mission. That's part of our focus, is to engage the community in as many levels as we can. So it's just been a pleasure.
And now tell me, is this going to be an annual thing?
We would like to see it become an annual thing. It remains to be seen. We're talking about that we're hopeful. Wow. And we want to thank you also. You have been so helpful to mentor the students and act as our MC.
You guys are wonderful, and enjoy working with the students. Now, the Louder Than a Bomb Festival in Chicago, tell me, what is that? And now that you're bringing it to Tulsa, what can the Tulsans have to look forward to?
Well, I think in Chicago, and as I'm learning in Tulsa, you know, these are cities that are in need of after-school programs. They're cities that are really radically segregated, and Louder Than a Bomb is an excuse to really bring young people together to tell stories and hear one another. And so in Chicago, for instance, we now have 72 teams from all over the city representing every socioeconomic, racial background, literally bringing every side of the city together in this central space of the festival, Louder Than a Bomb. And in Tulsa, I think we're going to see that same thing, that we're bringing North Tulsa and South Tulsa together. And my understanding, being an outsider, is that doesn't happen often enough. And I think in this festival, I've certainly been amazed by the ability to listen to the kids and be able to work with them a little bit. And you know, they have amazing stories to tell. And I think that
they do.
Yeah, and I think those narratives add to the public discourse the responsibility of being a citizen, of living in a democracy. I think you need to hear the whole story of a city. And I think, you know, in the little time that Nate and I have been here, I think that's what we're getting from the poems of the young writers.
Wow. Now, Glenda, we were talking about, we love poetry, I love drama. So, Kevin, we'd like you to perform.
I can do that.
Can you do that?
I could.
Well, we'll be back with more of Diversity Dialogue, but I want Kevin Coval to spit it out. So we'll be back.
Yeah, so this is a poem about one of my favorite times in Chicago. It's a poem called Sunrise. It is 6:13 a.m. On the phone, her voice a hushed arousal. From the bed looking east, the skyline's a silhouette, Hancock erect. The sun bursting out of Lake Michigan's wet mouth blushes Chicago a rainbow. Brick-roofed zenith, the peeled skin of orange, honey like the roads promised, the shallow pockets chasing them. All the blues, melancholic to indigo, follow black, crowning the body of Lakeshore. Awake are the alleys, scribbled with tribal pictures. Awake are the newspaper trucks hauling dead trees. Awake are the waitresses flipping on pots of coffee. Awake are the migrants hoping in the cold. Awake are the mothers still waiting on their sons. Awake are the corner store clerks opening iron gates. Awake are the teachers lesson planning long commutes. Awake are the cabbies going home to raise their families. Awake are the stray dogs packed in Humble Park. Awake are the L trains thundering through the sky. Awake are the buses rumbling through the streets. Awake are the fallen, risen from lower Wacker. Awake are the fishermen, older than the water. Awake are all the children putting on their uniforms. Awake are all the workers who will greet the sun. Awake is the sky, holding all this city. Awake is the sky, holding all this city. Awake is the sky. Awake is the sky. Awake is the sky. The sky.